Good morning. Welcome to our gentle yoga class. Today we are on the fourth niyama, which is self-study. In Sanskrit, in the book by Deborah Adele, she calls this, or they call it, the name of it is Svadhyaya. Svadhyaya means self-study. So go ahead and find yourself in any comfortable position. You can be seated or lying down on your back. And maybe just take a moment to gently close down the eyes or soften the gaze. Maybe just like imagining that the past can sort of dissipate, the future can wait. Just allow yourself to come in to your present moment experience. I'll read you a few of these beautiful passages about this idea of self-study. In the book by Deborah Adele, she says, "The world and others simply reflect back to us what we are seeing, not what is there. It is as if wherever we look, there are only mirrors to show us pictures of ourselves. We cannot love or hate something about another person or the world unless it is already inside of us first. The world gives you what you see. The Buddhists say that the universe dies when you do because you have created your own little world of reality. As you begin to steadfastly pay attention to what you are saying to yourself at the moment, the other person, and life, you will get clues about these little boxes you have wrapped yourself in to create your own universe. All of these utterances are projections of parts of yourself you love, don't love, can't see, or can't yet accept. When faced with any disharmony, our tendency is to blame what is outside of us and then justify what we are thinking or feeling. If we are courageous enough to trace the disharmony back to ourselves, we can begin to unpack our boxes and open up vast amounts of freedom that brings us closer to our true essence. Tracing back begins to unpack belief systems of shoulds, musts, and right and wrong. Gandhi was once interviewed by a reporter who asked him if he was ever incensed or outraged at his oppressors. Gandhi solemnly replied, no, he didn't. because he knew what existed in the interior landscape of his own being. He was not afraid to look at the fullness of emotions inside himself, and because of that fearless act of witnessing his interior being, he was able to maintain courage rooted in kindness and compassion. Gandhi knew that denial cuts us off from the full reality of ourselves. There is a Cherokee story in which the grandfather is explaining to his grandson that two animals live inside his heart, a wolf and a lamb. When the grandson asks, "What is he to do?" the grandfather replies, "Feed the lamb." We can choose to grow ourselves into someone more compassionate and kind to both ourselves and to others. We must be willing to look at the selfishness and greed and anger that lies in us, but feed the greatness. The path of growth is not a straight line. It does not look anything like what we think it should look like. In fact, often our belief system of what growth should look like is the very thing that stops our growth. What we think we know stops our inquiry. The Buddhists remind us to have a beginner's mind, to know that we don't know. It is this stance of humility that opens the door to learning and revelation. Maybe for today, we can think about this idea of self-study as a practice, cultivating the beginner's mindset, being open to inquiry with kindness and compassion. Wherever you're at, let's go ahead and move on to our backs. And maybe you want to have a few blocks or one and a blanket, or actually I meant a strap close by. You have a blanket if you want to too. So go ahead and gently move onto your back. Once you find yourself on your back, you can walk your feet as wide as your mat. Stretch your arms out into a letter T shape, and then just begin to allow your knees to gently sway from side to side. You'll often hear in classes, this is called windshield wipering the knees. Make this movement your own, feeling free to move at the pace of your own breath. The next time the knees fall over to the left, you can just allow them to fall towards the earth. Feel the hug of gravity. And then maybe you want to stretch your right arm at a diagonal out to the right. You could turn your gaze up towards your fingertips on the right side and start to feel the length, the openness from the palm of the hand down towards the wrist, the forearm, the elbow, along the armpit, down the side of the rib cage, towards the hip, along the thigh, down to the right knee. Take a nice deep breath into this open space, imagining it as a nice open landscape, open to willingness, inquiry, kindness, and compassion. And then with your next inhale breath, we'll float the knees back up towards the sky. Bring the right arm back to a letter T. And this time you can allow the knees to fall over to the right. So if your feet are as wide as the mat, you might find that your left knee is falling down towards your right foot. Feel free to make any adjustments to make this comfortable. And then maybe you stretch your left arm at a diagonal. So you're kind of reaching past your ear. See if you can find that length on this side from your right fingertips to the palm of your hand. Opening through the wrist, the forearm, along the elbow to the armpit, along the side of the ribs, the hip, the thigh, cascading all the way down to the knee. Maybe you turn your gaze up towards your left fingertips, just keeping your head resting on the earth. You can just float your eyes to look towards the hand, breathing into the landscape of your left side. And then on the next inhale, we'll float the knees back to center. Bring the arms next to the body. And then we'll walk the heels in towards the sit bones. You can start to hug the elbows in towards the rib cage, and then maybe you point your fingertips up towards the sky. We're going to take a few rounds of bridge here. So you could start with some really gentle pelvic tilts, just gently lifting the low back off of the mat as you tip the bowl of the pelvis forward. So the sit bones are kind of pointing towards the mat. And then we'll gather up all of the resources, tipping the pelvis back, pressing the low back towards the mat. Now your sit bones are like headlamps pointing up towards your knees. And go ahead and find these gentle tilts of the pelvis, breathing into the sensation. And you can always follow the pace of your own breath and make this movement a little bit bigger, pressing into the heels, lifting the hip points off of the ground, coming into a bridge, and then lowering down, maybe on your inhale breath, lowering your vertebrae down onto the ground. Exhale, lifting up into your bridge. Follow the pace of your own breath, and what feels right to you. Now you can keep going in this active movement of bridge, or the next time you lift your hips, you might slide a block right underneath your low back for a supported bridge. You could also come up into an active bridge and hold that. So you might just stay lifted. Maybe you swing your hands down so you can interlace your hands underneath your low back. So in either active or supported shape. And you can always change your mind coming in and out. Maybe if you're with the block underneath you, you can press actively into the heels to lift the hips for a little bit of strengthening, and then exhale to gently lower, finding support in the supported bridge. Take a few more nice deep breaths wherever you're at. And then when you feel ready, we'll press into the heels, lift the hips, slide the block out from underneath you, and then maybe you lift your heels so you're on the balls of the toes, balls of the foot, and you can allow your spine to roll back down one vertebrae at a time. And then we'll hug the knees in towards the chest. Here's where you might like to use the strap. So you can either hug your hands onto your knees, or maybe you wrap the strap around your shins. And we'll find some nice circles with the knees. Finding a gentle massage of the low back. Thinking of this keystone area of the sacrum. Where we might store some of our emotions, our creativity. In yoga, we talk about this seven chakra system, and the sacrum, the low back, is considered the second chakra or energy center. When you're ready, you can reverse the direction if you haven't already of your knee circles. And then from here, go ahead and come back to stillness, keeping your knees stacking over your hips. We're going to find a dead bug position for some core strengthening here. So you can bend your elbows, press your low back against the mat, and just energetically here, draw your elbows and your knees towards each other. You can stay right here, or you might explore some cross body movement, maybe lengthening your left foot up towards the sky, lengthening your left leg, and then reaching your right fingertips, lengthening your right arm. And then we'll come back to the starting position and then try the other side. So you can keep doing this side to side. Another variation of this is kind of like people do this a lot of times on hands and knees in tabletop, but it's like a bird dog. So you would stretch your left leg long to hover over the earth, stretch your right arm past your ear, and then come back to the starting position. So you could try this a little bit side to side. Whenever you feel done, tired of that, just take a nice long body stretch to rest. If you're taking a long body stretch now, maybe take a moment to rotate the wrists and the ankles in one direction, and then reverse the direction when you're ready. And then let's slide the knees back to bent. Press the soles of the feet on the earth. You can press into the heels, lift the hips, and then just allow the hips to sway a little side to side like a hammock. And then we're going to float the hips over towards the right, land the left hip on the earth, and then come into a nice big twist. So this is a little bit different than the twist we did earlier, where the knees this time are stacked. Your arms could be in the letter T, and then you can float your gaze over towards your right hand. Allowing yourself to gently settle into your twist. Breathing into the areas of sensation here. Allowing both of your shoulders to rest heavy on the earth. With your next inhale breath, we'll roll onto, and then exhale really. You can roll onto your left side, and you can either cradle your head on your hand by bending your elbow. You're going to lay all the way onto the left side, so it's kind of like a slumber party pose here with your head resting on your hand. Or if you have that block, you could slide the block underneath your head for like a pillow and extend your arm out in front of you. We're going to do some clamshells to strengthen through the hips. So you can go ahead and glue the heels together. We'll lift the top knee, exhale to lower. Go ahead and move at your own pace, following the pace of your own breath in and out of a few clamshells. Maybe you can cultivate that beginner's mind by sending your breath into the hip joint, marveling at the intricate design and architecture. The next time your knee is lifted, just take a moment to pause at this end range, seeing what is required, taking some nice deep breaths. And then on your next exhale, we'll close down the knee. You can slide the knees back so they're in a straight line with the body, and then lift the top knee, lower it either to the ground or to a block if you need to bring the ground up to you. I'm a fan of that. And then let's take our fist and just give a little gentle pat to the hip joint. Just a little loving massage. And then when you're ready, let's stack the knees back together, and then you can reach down with your top hand, that's my right hand, to grab hold of the ankle and maybe just give a little quad stretch. If it feels too far away, you could also lasso the foot with your strap, and that would give you a bit more space. You don't have to grab hold of the foot. And you're just flexing the toes towards the knee to stretch through the quad. This time you can lengthen the bottom leg long or keep the knee bent, whatever feels best for you. Maybe it helps with balance. And then from here, we're going to find a straight leg, lifting that foot up towards the sky. So you're kind of challenging your balance here. And maybe you use your hand on your foot, or again, you could wrap the strap around the foot. Lengthen your leg long. And this might be a bit of a balance challenge too on the side of the body. Whenever you're ready, you can lower the leg back down. We're going to be trying all of that on the other side. So come onto your back. Take a moment to press into your heels, lengthen your spine, and then just take a moment to notice the differences here from left to right. How does it feel in your body? From here, we'll press into the heels, lift the hips, start to hammock the hips side to side, floating them side to side, just rocking them gently. And then the next time they float over towards the left, you can land the right hip on the earth, stack the knees over to the right, extend your arms into a letter T shape, and find your twist. Maybe turning your gaze over towards your left hand. Relaxing your shoulders, relaxing through your jaw. Cultivating your warrior breath, the ujjayi breathing. Take one more nice deep breath on this side, and then with your next exhale, we're going to roll onto our right side now. And you can find support for your head either on your hand, bending the elbows, stacking the knees. We'll glue the heels together, and then you can begin to inhale and exhale. Find your clamshells on this side. And if you notice differences from left to right, you could always try cultivating compassion and curiosity. And this is a borrowed pose from physical therapy to help support our knees, our back, a bit of strengthening here. And I would encourage you, if you end up doing this class on a replay, maybe you even grab your PT bands, and you could always bring one across your thighs or your ankles or wherever would feel good to give a little bit more strengthening if you want. Always optional. Coming back to that appreciation for the intricate architecture of your hip. Thinking about keeping the rest of the body relatively stable as you lift and lower the top knee. And we'll just do it to the point of fatigue, and then maybe to add an extra little challenge in here, you might leave the top knee lifted for a few rounds of breath, however long you'd like to hold that for. When you feel ready, we'll close down the knee, slide the knees back into a straight line with the body, and then lift the top knee lower it to the ground or to a block, and then just find a little bit of stretch through the hip. You can bring your fist onto your hip, give it a little loving massage. A little gentle pounding. And then from here, we're going to find our quad stretch. So you can stack the knees once more. Maybe you take the strap and lasso the foot. How can we do that easily? Here, wrap the strap around the foot to find that quad stretch. And you can lengthen the bottom leg long, flex your toes maybe towards the knee to find some activation of the leg and stretch through the quad. Take one more nice deep breath here. Then we're going to turn this into Vishna's couch. This is this pose where we extend the top leg up towards the sky. You can have the strap around the foot, balancing on your side. Might require a little bit of strength from the core. Staying relatively on your side as you extend the top leg up towards the sky, any amount. Noticing where you feel the sensation in your body. Take one more nice deep breath here. And when you're ready, you can release your foot from the strap. Allow the leg to find the opposite leg. Coming back onto your back now. You can press into your heels, lengthen your spine, and then just take a moment to pause, allowing yourself to recalibrate. From here, we're going to come up to either a seat or hands and knees. So you can hug your knees into your chest and rock and roll up and down the length of your spine, or just roll onto one side and press yourself up into a seat. We're going to do some cat and cow, so we can either do that from a seat, and you might use a blanket. So I'm taking the blanket and folding it into a little bit of a pillow. You could also use a pillow to sit on. Remember that you can also sit in a chair. And then some people really like to do cat and cow from hands and knees, from tabletop. So that would be stacking your palms underneath your shoulders, your knees underneath your hips. So find what feels comfortable for you in your body and notice how that can change. We're always entering different seasons of our life. So maybe different things feel right at different times. From wherever you're at, we're going to move the spine. So on your inhale breath, you can lift the heart forward, arch the spine forward, and then exhale, round into your cat shape, drawing your belly button maybe towards your spine. You could also do this with your legs extended out long. So just finding some movement for your spine. Inhaling for cow pose, exhaling to round into cat. I'm going to show us the cat cow. At any point, you can take some nice big circles with the belly button. Like clearing out cobwebs. Notice if you find any places of holding or tension that might need extra attention. If you're rolling in one direction, take those barrel rolls in the opposite direction when you're ready. From wherever you're at, you can come back to center and then feel free to find a child's pose if that feels okay to be on hands and knees. You can always pad underneath the knees with that blanket for a little bit of extra support. Or you might like to come into a downward dog instead in order to get a stretch and be off of the knees. So I like to use the blocks for downward facing dog. You could also use the chair, the seat of the chair. And for the blocks, I'm using mine on the medium setting, just making sure that you're going to be comfortable and they feel strong and supportive. And then you can lengthen through your spine, maybe sashay the hips a little bit side to side. Whenever you feel ready, we'll meet up in a forward fold. So walking your hands towards your feet or your feet towards your hands. And you can walk your feet a little wider to make room for your belly, your torso. Maybe you wrap your hands around your opposite elbows and just allow yourself to ragdoll side to side. Or you can make this less of an intense movement by keeping your hands on the blocks or on the seat of a chair. Bending into one knee at a time. When you're ready, we're going to come back to center. Bring your hands either to rest against your shins or thighs or on the blocks or on the chair. We'll inhale to lengthen the spine up halfway. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale here for halfway lift. Exhale to forward fold. One more time, inhaling to lift and lengthen the spine up halfway. Exhale to forward fold. And then we'll find that micro bend in the knees, a little bit of spring in your legs, and then float the torso up towards the sky. You can swing the hands around, have them meet, and then draw them to the heart center. Take a moment to release your hands to your sides, and we'll find a standing mountain pose. Lifting the heart with your breath, drawing the shoulder blades together at your back. And then we're going to get ready for some standing poses. So warrior one, humble warrior, and then a balancing pose called half moon pose. And this could be very helpful if you have a wall space that you would be able to do this pose next to. So imagine that my bed here is a wall. You could do the poses right next to the wall, and that way when we do the half moon, which is a balancing pose, it'll look something like this. You can be right parallel to the wall so that you can feel like if you were going to fall, you would fall into support. So we're going to set up for warrior one by stepping the right foot forward, the left foot back, and the left toes can be kind of angled out towards the corner of your mat. And your feet are offset like they're on train tracks. And then I have my blocks out in front, so I'll be able to use those for support. From here, you might take your hands and interlace them at the low back. You could also reach for your strap so that you could bring the strap. That would create a little bit more space for the hands. And we'll bend into the front knee, lift the heart, and then we're going to find humble warrior next. So start to lift the gaze up towards the sky. And then on your next exhale, start to glide the gaze down as you hinge forward from the hips. And you could reach your arms up and back for a bind. You could also bring your hands onto your hips. And eventually we will bring our hands onto blocks or a chair. So just allowing yourself to find that bind with your arms maybe reaching up and back for a while if that feels okay. And then whenever you feel ready, soften your hands on to the blocks in front of you or onto the ground. I think it would be very challenging to bring my hands onto the ground, which is why I like the blocks, because they bring the earth a little closer to me. We're coming into humble warrior here. Now let's all bring our hands down. From here, you can pivot so that you're on the ball of the back foot. And this is basically a high lunge now. You can stay in the high lunge. Maybe it would feel good to floss the hips a little forward and back, flexing into the front knee. And then maybe gently straightening it, not all the way straight. We don't want to hyperextend it. So keeping a soft micro bend. The other option here is going to be for the half moon, which is the balancing pose. So you can start to walk your blocks forward, hop your back foot in, and then we're going to step the right hand to the right. So I'm, instead of having the block right in front of my foot, I'm going to step the block on the high setting out to the right and then kick the left foot back and start to stack the hips, opening the hips up for a half moon. And if your block is really off to the right, you can kind of lean against it for support. Maybe you float the top hand up towards the sky. Maybe you lift the gaze. And remember that you can always stop anywhere along the way. You can also bring both hands to the ground for support and just keep the back leg lifted for standing balance. That would be like a standing split. Whenever you feel ready, we'll lower down into our forward fold. Feel free to find any resting position, or if you did want to build more heat, you could always take a down dog, maybe a plank. The resting position I like is actually a seated squat. So for that one, you can walk your feet as wide as the mat, point your toes out at a diagonal, and then stack the blocks, lower the hips to come into Malasana. This is a wide squat. May or may not feel good or supportive. Remember, you can always sit in a chair instead for a squat. That would bring the earth even further up to you. And just take a moment to Pause, maybe bring your hands to your heart center. You can always just pause standing in mountain pose as well, remembering that you have infinite options. If you're in this seated squat, maybe you rest your right arm to the inner thigh. Bring your left hand to your shoulder and just peek around behind you for a twist. Maybe you unfurl that left arm, reaching the left fingertips behind you, like opening a fern. And then we'll come back to center. Try it on the other side. Press the left palm or the left forearm into the left inner thigh. Bring the right hand to the shoulder and start to peek around the left, towards the right. And then you could always reach and extend the right arm back for a twist. On the next exhale, we'll come back to center. You can land your hands on the mat and then press your hips up to find your forward fold. Walk your feet back underneath your hips. We'll press into support to inhale, lift up halfway. Exhale to forward fold. And then spring load the legs to inhale to rise to center. Exhale, draw your hands to your heart center. And just take a moment to rest your hands on your heart. Feel for the rhythm of your heartbeat, closing down the eyes or softening the gaze, and sinking into your intention for your practice. Letting go of expectations, cultivating the beginner's mind. And then we'll blink the eyes open. We're going to get ready to set up for the other side. So I'm realizing my mat needs a little adjustment. This time we'll step the left foot forward, the right leg back. I have my blocks there for support. Maybe you have a wall space about, I would say, a foot away from you, or maybe half a foot, so that you know that if you were to fall over, you could fall into support. This is the practice of asking for help, right? Recruiting help. So make any adjustments that you might need. See if you want to use the strap for your humble warrior. So you can either interlace your hands at your low back, draw your shoulder blades together, lift your heart, or maybe you grab hold of a strap between your hands to give yourself a little bit more space. Well, inhale to lift the heart, lift the gaze, and then start to draw a line with your gaze in front of you. As you start to lower your gaze, you can allow yourself to hinge forward, resting your torso on your front thigh, maybe stretching your arms back and overhead. You could bring your hands to your hips, or eventually we'll land our hands down in front of us. Take a moment to soften your upper body, resting it heavy on the support of your legs. Feel the legs supporting you, and then see if you can draw more support and more energy up from the ground into your feet. The support of your community. This network, just like the trees are connected through their roots, can we feel the connection to each other? as we are sometimes humbled by life. When you're ready, we're going to bring our hands to the blocks if they're not there already. Pivot so that your heel is now lifted. So you're in this high lunge. You can always stay in the high lunge. This is a great stretch too. And if you're wanting to try this balance, remember it's okay to try and give yourself that grace of practice, compassion, kindness. It truly is a practice. We'll start to hop the back foot in, step the blocks out in front. We're going to take that left block, instead of putting it right in front of your left toes, you can step it to the left. And what this is doing is creating more of a triangle of support. It's like your face is kind of the right angle, and then your toes are creating more of a triangle shape with the block, and then you can kick the back foot up. Now you could stay here or start to peel the hip to stack, and you might bring your right hand onto your hip. You might extend your right hand up towards the sky, and maybe you challenge your balance by turning your gaze up toward your lifted hand. At any point, feel free to land both hands, kicking your foot up or back, and then land both feet to find a forward fold. Any way to rest. You can come to stand. You can sit on a chair. You could come into this malasana squat with or without the blocks, walking the feet wide, pointing the toes out at diagonals. And then I have the two blocks stacked in order to make a seat for the squat, supported squat. And you could stay right here, resting your hands on your heart, feeling for the rhythm of your heartbeat. Or we could do this twist again. So maybe you rest your left forearm right on the inseam, right on the inner thigh, and then bring your right hand to your shoulder, gaze up and back, and maybe you bloom the fingertips out and back, reaching behind you, peeking back. On the next exhale, coming back to center, you can bring your hands into prayer. And then you might try the other side now, pressing the right forearm into the inner thigh, that crease at the knee, bringing the left hand to the shoulder. You can start to turn and open to the left. You might reach the left fingertips up and back, maybe peeking behind you. And then on the next exhale, you can bring that back to center. We're going to find our forward fold now, so you can press your palms into the earth, into the mat, lift the hips, and then we'll walk the feet back to find a downward facing dog. I'm using my hands on blocks here. I'm going to give you the option of pigeon, but pigeon is not everyone's favorite all the time. So I'll walk you through how you can set up for it from downward dog. You can bring your right knee towards your right wrist and then slide your left leg back. You could use a folded blanket or a pillow underneath the hip for support. And you could be upright to stretch through the front of the left hip for pigeon if your right knee is forward. And if you're just not interested in this shape at all, that's okay to veto anything. This is a choose your own adventure class. So this, you'll get a similar stretch and sensation if you come onto your back for figure four, which we've done quite a bit in this class, laying on the back, maybe using the wall or couch for support. If you're upright in your pigeon, you could start to melt your heart forward, maybe stacking your forearms on the ground or on blocks. You could even stack your fists here to make a little pillow to rest your forehead. So wherever you're at, take a moment to once more use this concept of the beginner's mind to breathe into that intricate detail and architecture of your hip. Noticing where else in the body can you let go of holding. If you're loving this pigeon shape, you're welcome to stay here longer. I'm going to show you how you can turn it into a twist. So I'm going to remove the blanket so that my right hip can find the mat. And you'll notice my legs are now in a pinwheel shape. You can swing a block around to the right side and then inhale to turn to the right. Exhale, maybe you reach your left hand onto your right knee and turn your gaze behind you. This is kind of like a mermaid twist. On the next exhale, allow your head to bow towards your heart and just sweep your gaze over your left shoulder. Remembering that everything is optional. When you're ready, we'll unwind from our twist and you can get set up for the second side. So maybe you find yourself coming into downward facing dog, just like you did before. I'm just going to stay on the ground here and just in case people aren't sure of what I was talking about, the figure four pose on the other side. So if you're ready to come into pigeon on the left side, you'll bring the left knee towards the left wrist. Or if you're preferring to do figure four, you can lay on your back, rest your right foot on support, cross your left ankle over your right thigh, and draw the shape into the body. So this is what I'm talking about with figure four. If you're coming into pigeon on the left side with the left knee forward, you might take that blanket or a pillow or a block and wedge it underneath the hip for support. Now take a moment to start over again with this appreciation of the hip joint as if you've never noticed it before on the left side. You can always stay a little longer, or if you're in your pigeon, you might land on your left hip, coming into this mermaid twist. So your legs are kind of in a pinwheel shape. You can bring a block behind your left side, press your left palm into the block as you exhale, reaching across with your right hand onto your left knee and turning your gaze over your left shoulder. As you inhale, lengthening your spine. As you exhale, maybe finding a millimeter more of space in your twist. We'll stay in the twist. We're just going to turn the gaze so you can allow your head to bow towards your heart, and then slowly, slowly, slowly let the chin hover over the chest as you turn the gaze over the right shoulder. Whenever you're ready, you can unwind from your twist. Make your way back to the center of your mat from wherever you are. And we'll come onto our seat, swinging the legs around in front of you. You can hug your knees in. Make sure you have no props behind you, and we'll set up for boat pose. Thinking about this buoyancy of your heart, you can start to lean back, hugging behind your thighs, or you can reach your arms out in front for more of a challenge. You could hug your hands behind your thighs and start to lift your shins, balancing on your sit bones. And then whenever you're ready, we'll roll onto the back, hug the knees in towards the armpits. So you're hugging behind the thighs, or you could walk your hands up onto your ankles. You might grab hold of your feet and maybe take some nice big sighs for happy baby. You might slowly rock a little side to side, kicking your feet out to the sides. And then if there are any last shapes that are calling for you, any favorites, anything you want to revisit, spend more time in, you could always insert that into your practice right now. If you're ready for your final resting pose, Shavasana, I want to encourage you to cozy up with any creature comforts. This might mean putting a pillow underneath the knees. It could mean staying in constructive rest. This could be a little gentler on the low back to stay with the feet flat on the mat and the knees bent, allowing the knees to tent together just like we did at the beginning of class. From here, you could rest your hands on your belly, allowing your elbows to rest on the earth, allowing you to tune into the rise and fall of your own unique breath. Maybe there's a way to drape something over the eyes to shut out the light, allowing yourself to drop deeply into the dark mystery within you. When you're coming into your final rest, you can invite your eyes to close, your gaze to soften. Softening through your jaw and your shoulders. Take a moment to allow yourself this opportunity to delight in a time of rest. The path of growth is not a straight line. It does not look anything like what we think it should look like. In fact, often our belief system about what growth looks like is the very thing that stops our growth. What we think we know stops our inquiry. The Buddhists remind us to have a beginner's mind, to know that we don't know. It is this stance of humility that opens the door to learning and revelation. You can begin to deepen your breath, And then take a moment to allow your curious imagination to drift to all the corners of the universe that you don't know. Allowing yourself to feel humbled at the vastness that is beyond our knowing, our comprehension. Taking with us the beginner's mind, and then as you explore these areas, maybe you can practice awe and wonder. What a tremendous gift it is to be here today, alive in this unique time and place. And then wherever you're exploring, allow yourself to pause, drift your awareness down towards your earthly form. Find gratitude for the gift of the body. And then allow your awareness to float back down into your earthly form, re-inhabiting this body that is on loan to you for this moment. And then start to send your breath down into your fingers, into your toes. Gently begin to rotate your wrists and your ankles. You can take a nice long body stretch, reaching your arms past your ears. And then allow yourself to roll onto one side, cradling your head on the soft pillow of your upper arm. Finding a fetal position. Take two more nice deep breaths there. Gratitude for the breath, the body that intelligently knows how to breathe itself. And then you can press up into a seat using the strength of your hands. Find any comfortable seat, and then feel free to allow your hands to greet each other, coming into a prayer position, Anjali Mudra, a gesture of gratitude at your heart center. Allow your heart to rise, and on your next exhale, you can humbly bow your head towards the wisdom of your loving heart. It's such an honor and a privilege to guide you through your practice. And together we can say Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, which means peace, peace, peace. Enough for ourselves, each other, and the rest of the world. So thank you so much for joining me. Your presence does make a difference. So I'll stop the recording and feel free to hang around. If you have questions or thoughts about class, next week we'll be on the last niyama from the yamas and niyamas.